All right, enough silly faces. I like to do silly faces at the start of it for Instagram because it then takes a little snapshot of that, and that's the tile that'll actually be in the stories. We pull on some weird face. Anyway, that's why I'm doing that in the morning, just in case you wondered why I'm pulling stupid faces. It's not because I'm sucking on lemons. All right, welcome. It is the 10th day of May in 2022. This is SitRep. I didn't get one out yesterday. Apologies. I was traveling for work. So anyway, speaking of which, if I get interrupted and have to leave, then I have to leave because I'm on call doing stuff. But welcome for those of you who are following it this morning on Instagram, and for those of you who are on the YouTubes watching this as well, or watching it later. I'm not going to tell you when you should be watching this. This is where I go through some stories which will be collated over the last 48 hours. So there are a number of stories this morning because I didn't do one yesterday. And I pick up things that I find interesting, that I look at where the world is heading, where we are heading as a society, and especially where we as Australians are heading, and then think about how we can best prepare ourselves in the future for the eventualities that may be coming our way. That doesn't make sense, does it? Eventualities that may be coming our way. If something's eventual, then it has to be coming our way. Anyway, looks a bit more balmy than where I usually am. Yes, I've traveled a number of hours north, actually only 3 hours north of where I usually am. And the low up here is more than the high where I live. So for me, it's relatively warm, but it is rather rainy here. So there's that. And I forgot to bring my rain jacket. All right, so let's jump into it in no particular order. I didn't go through the order of things today, so we'll just go through it and see what comes out. So the start off stuff that I'll go through was some stuff that was yesterday's news, which actually is interesting because I'll juxtapose that with things that came out today. CIA director explains why China is carefully studying Ukraine. So there was a number of things that came out, including, and I didn't snapshot this, but this was a conversation that I was having with someone over Instagram last night about the US and the languaging that the US has. So they've just changed their policy or their official documentation on their standing about Taiwan. So previously their standing about Taiwan was this. It was essentially, yes, we support the Chinese one China policy. I don't think they even mentioned they may have mentioned the word Taiwan, but they may not have. But it was very like, we're hands off here and you guys do you over in that part of the world. Well, they updated that overnight and they came out and said basically that we support Taiwan's independence. They still had some rhetoric around the one China policy. So they still have a bit of a foot in each camp. They're not quite like 100% saying we support Taiwan, and if China moves on Taiwan, we will come and help them. But they laid the foundation for that. So that's all written up now and out there on the internet. The response from China, I haven't seen yet. I don't imagine it's going to be a great one. There was some rumblings from some of their ministers that were a bit like, hang on a minute. And Taiwan has actually released their response to it overnight, which they were like, hey, that's good, but why have you only gone 50% of the way? Can you go 100% of the way and just come out and say it? Like, you're doing everything else. You're sending ministers here. You're sending special envoys here. You're making all these announcements about Taiwan and supporting us, and yet your official statement here only goes 50% of the way. So this is obviously all just laying that groundwork for something happening in this area of the world, in South China Sea, around Taiwan. And I've been talking about this for a long time. But the Chinese president has come out and said that he's unsettled by the West's reaction to Russia's military operations. So essentially what they're doing here is they're looking at what's going on in Ukraine. They're studying it very closely, and everyone knows what's going on. China's looking at it and going like, okay, yes, I see what you're doing, right? Sanctions on Russia. Hey, everyone in China, get ready for sanctions. And everyone's like, why would you say that? Well, it's pretty obvious why they would say that. So the US, so the CIA director here has come out and said, like, well, China's looking at Ukraine because they're going to do this. They're going to, do exactly this. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly this. It's not a carbon copy. They can't just go like cut and paste Russia, invade Ukraine, Okay, we will invade Taiwan. Bang, done. Okay, and expect the same sanctions. It's going to be different. There's going to be a whole heap of other factors that are involved here. But we're still heading down this path. It doesn't matter what's being said around it. We're still going down the same path. We're still heading towards, likely, China moving in on Taiwan. Some of the documents and some of the information that we were looking at, especially one of the experts that came out in a think tank. So I was talking, that conversation that I was having last night with someone on Instagram, was that a lot of the experts are saying probably 2024 is what we're looking at. I think maybe something might happen before then, but 2024 does look like a pretty fortuitous time for China. They've got a number of things happening there. Primarily, Taiwan and the US will be in an election cycle. And if we're looking at how fractious US is right now, imagine how it's going to be if, say, that Trumpster dude comes in and goes like, yep, I'm 100% running in 2024. US will be at its weakest point, I believe, at that point. And that would be when China is looking, straight out of Sun Tzu's Art of War, move when your opponent is weak. That's the time to strike. So that would be in kind of looking in the near future, without the black swan events, without the unknown unknowns. That would be the most known hazardous time for the US and the most fortuitous for China to move. The CIA director also weighed in about nukes being used in and around the Ukraine conflict. This is something that almost every other day they seem to be coming out going like, yep, they're going to use it. No, I don't think they could use it. Yep, they're going to use it. No, they're not going to use it. So he basically came out, Financial Times, and said the US intelligence agency has not seen any practical evidence that Russia would use tactical nuclear weapons in this conflict. So a lot of the stuff when these news stories come out, a lot of it is just the spin up from the news agencies, that they're freaking out and they're like, "Wow, quick! This will sell newspapers. Put that nuclear word up there. Chuck that N word in." And people, I was about to say buy newspapers. Nobody buys newspapers anymore. People will subscribe. People will click through. So yeah, that's it's something that's flying in the face of that. That you've got actually. When I read this, I'm like, oh, at last, a cooler head, somebody who's like, hey, let's just relax this down and look at this from an actual logical standpoint, where it doesn't make sense for countries to start slinging nukes around. And personally, I think like the likelihood of things going nuclear, it's always increasing as escalation of conflict increases, but it's still like there's a massive line there. There's a massive brick wall that people would have to get past. It's not like Putin's just sitting there today going like, should I sling a nuke over there? Let me flip a coin. That's not happening. They know what the consequence of it is as well, so they're not going to do it. All right, let's talk about prices around the world. Again, there's a whole heap of stories about prices, about markets and things like that, and I didn't go through and organize stuff this morning, but this from yesterday. Baltic nation sees wild surge in consumer prices. So Estonia Consumer Price Index saw a dramatic surge of 18.8%, which I was talking about yesterday as well. So what we're seeing here is now a lot of this CPI data coming out from a lot of European countries. This one's butted up against Russia, obviously, and has dependencies on Russia. So we're seeing prices rise over there. We've got some German data that's come out where they're hurting, and especially the foreign minister, their financial ministers come out and talked about how it's bad times ahead for Germany. And as Germany goes, I think the rest of Europe will go, because Germany is arguably in the best position financially of all the European countries, of all the EU countries, I should say. That they're the one who, they're kind of like the linchpin now of, or have been for a while, but the linchpin of the EU as far as finances go. So they are the, if you look at how the EU works, and especially how the euro works, you've got some countries that are not so good with their money, like the irresponsible sibling that's sort of like, Greece rocks up. Hey, I spent my money again. I'm sorry. Hey, can I get some more money? And Germany's the financially responsible ones. Like, yep, here you go. And so they're the ones who are usually shelling out, and other countries are usually the ones taking it. So if Germany starts hurting, then that's going to have some pretty serious implications for everything that's going on there. But I'm always keeping my eye on what's happening in this financial system in and around Europe. I think Europe's going to get hit hard from a number of different sectors, food-wise, finance-wise, and then they've got this war on their doorstep as well. So not looking good. So on Germany, the German minister of, who was it? The German Economic Cooperation and Development Minister. That's a long title. Economic Cooperation and Development Minister. And if I had to guess what that word was in German, and my German is very poor, I haven't studied it since I was in high school, but it would probably be one long word. They love making up words. I'm not even going to try and attempt it in German, but it'd probably be just like the German Eco Cooperation Development Minister or something like that. Whatever that is equivalent in German. Anyway, they've come out and said that we are facing the worst famine crisis since World War II. That's some pretty dramatic words that are coming out there. In fact, the minister, and I quote, "The situation is highly dramatic." That's an understatement. I just read that and went, that is such a German thing to say. Like, people are going to starve to death. We're facing a famine in Europe, in the developed world, in a place that has arguably one of the strongest economies of all the world economies, and is one of the most stable places in the world, is coming out and this is highly dramatic. No shit, Sherlock. But yeah, if a German is saying something's highly dramatic, then I get the sense that things are really starting to head off down shit creek, and we have zero paddles. All right, I want to talk about some instabilities of political instabilities around the world, just to, again, broaden our scope of what's going on in the world. We listen to mainstream media, you look at your news feed, you think there's three things going on at any given time in the world. And right now it is, there's war in Ukraine, there's riots over Roe versus Wade in the US, and Johnny Depp, right? There's other shit going on in the world, and it's serious. And we should expand ourselves out, not from the perspective of fear, just to stay informed, and so that we can then use that to inspire ourselves to best prepare as individuals, as families, as communities, for the uncertain future that's happening. But political instability is a big one. Obviously, we're coming into an election cycle in Australia. It's something we need to pay attention to within our own backyard. But Brazil is one of these countries that I always put on. I don't want to do an us and them thing, but they're kind of part of the bloc that is not the Western world. So they're the alternate to the US petrodollar, okay? So Brazil, and they've got their leader is notoriously right-wing, is probably a way to put it. So the previous president of Brazil has just come out and said, I'm running. I'm going to run in the next elections, which are October, I think. He will run in October's presidential elections, facing off against the incumbent Jair Bolsonaro. That dude's name, by the way, is Luis Inácio Lula da Silva. But I think they just call him Lula. He's just known as Lula. There was a Lula in there somewhere in that name. So yeah, he's going to run. So again, bang, watch for this, like, us versus them start to kick up in yet another country. Where else we got it? Ireland. Northern Ireland will have nationalist leader for the first time in history. I'm always shocked that people don't know more about the Irish history. I'm not really Irish in my background. There might be a couple of % Irish in my background. It's not that big of a deal to me, as in family ties, but I just find all of European history kind of fascinating, and I often talk about things, the fractious history of Ireland and how a lot of people don't know it in Australia, especially. But that country is essentially two countries. Okay, you got Northern Ireland and Ireland. Southern Ireland or Ireland proper, or Ayr, whatever you want to term it as. But what has essentially been two countries in effect. So Northern Ireland, which is seen as part of, maybe, or has strong ties to Britain, I'll put it that way. That's the nicest way I'm going to put it. They now have a nationalist leader for the first time in history. So are we going to see reunification of Ireland? Maybe. Will this have implications for Britain? This is actually all part of something that has been boiling and happening for a long time, and it is, and I keep talking about this, Europe, but especially the Isles at the moment, have been disintegrating and falling apart. We've had this homogenized Great Britain, the British Empire, which has been in decline for many, many years, falling apart. And the latest big blow for that was the Brexit sort of thing. And when that happened, then all those countries that make up the United Kingdom started going, okay, maybe it's time for us to do it. Will Scotland secede? Will Scotland actually separate from that bond? Will we see Northern Ireland be reunified into Ireland? And as I say, when this sort of starts happening, that's going to then have implications. So we've got in Europe, we've got, as I say, this EU is not the united front that a lot of people think it is. And I think that this sort of stuff will make other countries look at it and go like, okay, that's interesting. Should we start to maybe do our own thing, go our own way? Countries going their own way. Just interesting to watch. Will that have implications for Australia as well? Perhaps. Certainly that question of whether we should become the Republic of Australia, should we separate from the Commonwealth, is one that's continually come up. Hasn't got off the ground yet, but it's always there. What other fractious things do we have happening in the world at the moment? So in the US, these riots, or not even riots, there's riots, and then there's also these attacks that are coming out of it. So what we're seeing is pro-choice militants actually targeting people. They're targeting the judges. Several of the judges' houses have been almost blockaded by these riots. And so they've been doxxed, they've been, the information about where they live's been released, and people have come out. Overnight, pro-choice militants firebombed a Wisconsin family action office over the weekend. So Molotov cocktails were thrown in there. There was graffiti written all over it. So again, instability, and I keep talking about this, about riots and things like this. This is something we can start to expect anywhere. And I think it might even start to see it in Australia as well. So we could start to see these things. So think about that. How do you protect yourself in riots? If you are watching this and you're in the US, obviously, my recommendation for this sort of stuff is always try and avoid where possible. So try and stay out of these situations, try and stay away from heavily populated areas when it comes to things like riots or protests or things like that. Generally, there's a lot of advertisement about them because they need people to come to them. So they don't spontaneously happen. So access that information, see where they're happening, avoid being in those areas. If you are going into heavily populated areas or areas where protests could happen, start to think about the things that you might need to protect yourself, like, masks, goggles, all that sort of stuff. Stay safe out there, kids. What else do we have? More German stuff. I'm not going to talk about that, though. Let's talk about digital dystopia. 90% of nations apparently are planning CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. So that's the shift we're going to. Now, I'm not going to go into depth on this. If you've listened to me before, I think this is where we're heading as a society. I don't like it, but I think it's where we're heading. And there's not much we can do about that right now. I mean, there are things we can do about it. But I want to juxtapose this with something else, another story that came out. So Central bank digital currencies. Why are we heading to digital currencies? We've got this fiat system that seems to be crumbling. I think the banks are looking at that. I think they know that the number is up on the fiat currency. They're looking for something else, digital currency. Bang, this is something we can control. This is something we can get around. Okay. Now, where we've been shifting as a society is moving towards greater transparency within our financial systems, sort of. And so does central bank digital currencies offer us more transparency or less transparency? Yes. What? That answers both questions. Well, yes, it could, both. Most people, when you say, oh, it's in the blockchain, eyes glaze over and go, oh, okay, yeah, blockchain, cool, without understanding what blockchain is. It's like saying, hey, it's in the cloud. Oh, yeah, the cloud. The cloud isn't a real thing. There is no fucking cloud. The cloud's not a thing. It's a server. It's exactly what it was 5 years ago when we just called it's on a server. It's on a computer somewhere. Some clever marketing idiot just went like, hey, let's call it this group of servers the cloud, and we'll just spread it out over servers. Then people think it's a real thing and they'll have more trust in it. But it's exactly the same as it was. All right, it's just another term. It's another way of saying that something's on the internet. It's out there on a server. It's not on your computer necessarily. It's on someone else's computer. There isn't actually a cloud in the sky. So this I see as a similar sort of thing where people go like, oh, okay, yep, we're going to a digital currency. It's on the blockchain. Cool. Well, as long as we have trust in the government, we have trust in this blockchain, this mysterious, magical thing that we can't see, then we'll go for it. I think that's yet to be proven. This sort of stuff, this technology is in its infancy, and for us to just wholesale as a people go like, yep, we're going to do it. Trust. There you are, government, take our money. But the ins and the outs of it are, if the government controls the blockchain, the government sees what we're doing, and so they can see every transaction that we're doing regardless. You might think that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's up to you. I'm not going to argue that. But anyway, gold. Let's talk about gold. So gold, on the other hand, has been notoriously opaque, as in not transparent, as in we can't see what people are doing with it. So there was this idea that the government has a lot of gold, and we trust that they've got gold, and we all deal in gold. And then we moved away from that a little bit, and we said, well, the government's got some gold somewhere, and so we'll keep dealing with these notes. And then we go, okay, well, the government has said, look, there is gold somewhere, but it's not linked to this money anymore. But like if things go bad, we've got the gold, but just trust in this money now. And so we turned our trust into the money itself. And now that system is collapsing. And so the central banks are kind of like going, shit, do we tell them that there's still gold there? And so then they think that these plastic or paper notes are cool again, and they'll believe in them. But we don't want to do that because we don't want them to go back to the gold thing. We want them to go back to this money thing or to somewhere else. So they're in this weird juggling act at the moment going like, no, we've got the gold. Yeah, but don't deal in gold. We don't want you to have gold. Just know that we've got gold. So that's all good. It's a strange space that we find ourselves in. But here's the question. Do they have the fucking gold? It's been a long time since people actually had to check, right? I mean, people have been checking, but have they been really checking? So when we delinked from gold, it was no longer necessary for each country to actually hold gold. Countries do have a reserve of gold. They said, let's just keep it just in case. But we're not going to keep it. We don't need to actually have it here in our pockets or in our backyard. Let's just keep it in the US, or let's just keep it in London. So everyone just kept their money in London, or their gold in London, I should say. And they said, hey, London, we cool with that gold? And London's like, cool, we're cool. Yep. Are they though? Because now what's going to happen is countries are going to start going, hey, London, actually, our people don't believe that our money's cool. Can we get some of that gold back just so we can prove to them? Or actually, can we just go look at it? Can you just tell us that it's there? And London is already starting to go, yeah, cool. Yeah, absolutely. One at a time. Don't all you countries come in at once. We'll show you your gold one at a time. Something smells very bad here. And if I was a gambling man, then I would be saying London spent the gold, London's borrowed against the gold, London does not have all these countries' gold. Something is very wrong. Now, gold, interestingly enough, they've been trying to increase the transparency of it. So one of the mechanisms they've been using is stamping it with an actual stamp that says a serial number on that gold. So each country can actually know that is my gold. It's got my serial number on it. Denmark has just released their gold bar list. No serial numbers. They've said, hey, we've got, 66 tons or something like that, 600 tons. I can't remember how much it was, of gold. And yeah, it's there. We've got it. And people are like, cool. Well, where are your serial numbers? They're like, nah, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. That's not a big deal. But London's got it. Don't worry. London has assured us that it's there. Okay, awesome. So no proof that they actually have the gold. No proof that it's their gold. This could be a whole like cups game where they're like, yeah, we've got the gold. And as each country comes in, they're like, here's your gold. And there you go. Next country comes in, just pull out the same gold. They could be doing that. Who knows what's going? Who does that affect, though? Who has their gold in London at the moment? By the way, Denmark has about 95% of their gold in London. Okay, central banks of Denmark. Oh, Australia. Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Finland, Italy, Portugal, Austria, Sweden, Switzerland, Romania, Poland, Japan, South Korea, and India. I wonder what their combined economies would do if they found out that they weren't backed by gold, that they weren't backed by anything. What would happen to all the currencies of the world if they knew that, of those countries? And if those currencies collapsed, what would happen to all those economies? And if all those economies collapsed, what would happen to the world's economy? Not good things. So what countries have come out and said, yes, we've got the gold, but no, we're not showing you our serial numbers? Well, Denmark, as I said, okay, that's one country. The other country is two others. Germany, as I said at the start, pretty important economic sector. And drumroll, please, Australia. Yes, we came out and said, yeah, we've got gold. And people were like, cool, what's serial numbers on it? Yeah, totally, serial numbers. Got them on it. Anyway, how about that election? What's going on there? Woo. All right, let's sports and stuff. Sports ball. Let's watch some of that. So, who did print their numbers? Mexico. Okay, Mexico can print their numbers, but Australia can't. That's interesting to me. That concerns me. That actually concerns me, and that makes me think, maybe I just want to go and buy my own gold and silver and not be reliant on those ass clowns for it. All right, let's crack on. I've been talking for a long time today. There's still more to go. US gas prices soar as Europe and Asia scramble for LNG. I did portend this doom, not that I'm a soothsayer or anything like that, but I said, watch how this ripple affects prices in the world. Europe is hurting for natural gas coming out of Russia. So they've said, let's cut it off. All right, where they're going to get their LNG from? Other places in the world. Okay, what's that going to do to the price effect of LNG around the world? Skyrocketed. So if in Australia, even if we don't export any LNG to Europe at all, the price will go up. That's the way it works. Supply and demand, and it ripples across the world. If a company knows that they can make more money for it, then they will. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I actually kind of like that idea. But when we have something like this happen, we have this Russian conflict. Russia starts war with Ukraine. It severs, gets sanctions put against it. It says, fine, F you, I'm not going to put any gas into Europe anymore. Europe's like, hey, we need that stuff to live. US, can you help us? And the US is like, absolutely. We got heaps of it. Let's ship it over there. Liquid natural gas coming your way. That's obviously going to increase the price. What's that going to do? All the people in the US, they're going to pay more. All the people in Asia, they're going to pay more. All the people in Australia, we're going to pay more. So, and the good effect of that is that if Australia happens to be a net exporter of things like liquid natural gas, then that money comes flowing back into our economy, which is yet another factor of why I keep saying that to a certain extent, Australia is insulated against some of the larger order effects of the turmoil that we're seeing in the world at the moment. That it's not like overnight we're going to turn to Mad Max. We will be one of the latter places, the last places, I think, that will actually go into collapse if the world does go into collapse. I'm not saying it will, but we'll be insulated to a certain extent, but not forever. We will see it. But at the end of the day, who pays for it? Like, that money goes to a big company, and then through taxes and some other mechanisms and stuff like that, which is legalized corruption. The government gets some of that money. Us as individuals, you and me, we're just going to end up paying more for, a bottle of gas every time we want to have a barbie. That's the way it goes. Shanghai, what's happening in Shanghai? They've tightened their COVID lockdowns. Their case numbers, where are they going? Down. Oh, that's a good sign, right? So what's China going to come out and do? Punish their citizens even further and lock down even further and harder. What effect's that going to have on us? Supply chain again. Stop talking about supply chain, Stuart. No one cares anymore. What else is happening in the world? Let's jump into the Middle East. Tensions reach boiling point in and around Israel. So they've decided to launch their largest military training drill ever. This is the biggest one they've ever done, called Chariots of Fire. It's a cool name. Sorry. Chariots of Fire. If you've seen the movie, you get it, or listen to the song. So Israel's launching this huge military drill. Why are they doing that? They are basically saying to everyone out there that, hey, we are ready to do this. And I do not disagree. Of all the militaries in the world, I don't care what the size of Israel is, they are like, to me, they are like a bull ant. For those who don't know what a bull ant is, if you're not Australian, you never come across a bull ant. It's an ant that's about yay big. So it's a large ant, but you see them wandering around in the bush by themselves, and a human walks by. So this is something that is 8,000 times the size of this ant. And it's like, come at me, bro. I will F you up. And it will too. It'll climb up, it'll bite you, and then it stings you. It's got a stinger as well, like a wasp. Man, they're horrible things. Anyway, they're afraid of nothing. They're afraid of absolutely nothing. And that's what Israel is to me. They're just afraid of nothing. They will go to the last person, to the absolute last person. Yes, they have women fighting in their military as well. So they will. US stocks fall. Man, if you looked at stocks this morning, my entire thing was red when I was looking at it. Everything was down. Like everything. There's a couple of things that went up in the commodities, but even gold and silver went down. Unfortunately, so is the friggin' Australian dollar against the US. So it's not like we're getting any savings. I was like, yes, gold's gone down. Now might be the time to pick up some more gold. And then I looked at the Australian dollar, and it's dropped below 70%. It's like 69 something cents at the moment. And yeah, I was like, damn it. So gold price hasn't really been affected for Australians. Bitcoin down 11% overnight. NASDAQ down, dropped by about 4%, but it's just a lot of red. There's a lot of carnage in that financial world at the moment. So it's all in turmoil. Iran, so back in the Middle East now. Sorry to be jumping around a bit, but Iran, they just had a unannounced visit from the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. He's rocked up there. So we're seeing more and more of this tightening of this group of countries, more connection between them. We're seeing Iran, we've got Syria in here as well. But all these countries, this block that I keep talking about, this BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, Iran, Syria, South Africa, Venezuela, all these sort of countries that are saying no to sanctions, that are saying yes to each other and are starting to deal with each other more and more. Oh man, there's still so many stories here. All right, I'm just going to wrap this up really quickly. Let's talk about Sri Lanka very quickly. Sri Lanka has had massive riots, still a lot of riots going on. Cool video that Lauren actually sent me this morning of people tipping one of their minister's car into a river. I'm like, that's some angry people right there. So what's the result of that? Breaking news, apparently this is on Russian propaganda, so take it for what that is. But Sri Lankan PM has resigned. They called a state of emergency. They said, right, you're now on indefinite curfew. But the latest news is that the Sri Lankan PM has actually come out and resigned. So let's see how that goes. Hey Steve, how you going, man? Let's see how that works, if that eases tension a little bit over there or not. Last two things I want to talk about. This one, where are we? Yes, I'll talk about this one because it amused me. G7 comes out and vows to not let Russia win. All right, so they've come out. At the moment, we've got the Victory Day. So Russia's been celebrating Victory Day. This is, the end of World War II when they beat the Nazis. Germany also obviously celebrates this. Now, this was touted in Western media as a huge thing. Like, this is it, right? Yep, Putin's going to strike on Victory Day. And once again, Russia was like, why would we do anything that you think we're going to do? Like, seriously, why would you put that in the media? Anyway, so nothing happened. It was actually kind of a timid day for Putin. He just came out and spoke some rhetoric and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the G7 came out and said, we're not going to let Russia win. We are fighting this to the end. They issued a joint statement Sunday blasting Russia's ongoing military action in Ukraine and pledging further military and economic support to Kiev. We remain united in our resolve that President Putin must not win this war against Ukraine. Here's the greatest part of this, G7. This is in the memory of all those who fought for freedom in the Second World War. All those who fought for freedom in the Second World War, coming from the G7. Let me just remind you who the G7 is. Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK and the US. 3 of those countries fought for freedom in World War II. 3 of those countries were the countries they were fighting against in World War II. And one of those countries had capitulated and was in occupation. We're fighting for the freedom, the people who fought for freedom in World War II. It's like, yeah, that was against you guys. That was against yourselves. Anyway, I just found that amusing. I know things have changed, obviously, over the past 70 years. But that amused me this morning, looking at that. We're a united front. Wasn't that you guys? Anyway, I'm going to leave that alone. Okay, last little thing I'm going to leave you with. A report's come out. Again, this is coming out of Russian side of things because I don't think the Western media wants to report on this. But it was a survey that came out from a think tank called the Food Foundation that said in the UK, 2 million adults cannot afford food every day. They can't afford to feed themselves every day. Rising prices in the UK is feeling it really hard. If a place like UK can feel it, then a place like Australia can feel it eventually too. So this is something we need to think about. Food is super important. I always talk about this. Securing our own food supply system is a hugely important thing. People who can't eat generally do some bad things. Civilization, our glorious civilization that we have built over the past however many years you want to put the marker around, is only ever 9 meals away from utter destruction. So that's 3 square meals a day times 3 days. If we don't have food, people start doing some pretty crazy things. So start stocking up. Yes, call me Kilo. Start stocking up on your food. Start thinking about how you're growing food. Start thinking about where your food supply comes from and how you can build in resilience into your own food supply. It's something that we can do, and something we can do now. We have the opportunity. We have money in the bank that's still worth something right now. We have land that we can access right now, and there is abundant food on the shelves right now. Do not freak out. Do not panic. Make a plan and start working towards it. If you've made a plan and you've started working towards it, continue working towards it. Continue doing it. I continue doing it each day, each time I go shopping. I'm always thinking about this. There is no end point for me. I'm not like, yep, I'm done now. I can sit on my laurels and relax. I've got enough food for me. Do I have enough food for me and my family? Well, that's the next step. Do I have enough food for me and my family and the extended family and the people who, I want to look after in an emergency? Do I have enough for random people and the unknown unknowns that could happen in the future? So continue doing it, continue prepping, continue stocking up your food. We can do this, because a secure person is a safe person. An insecure person, especially food insecure person, is a dangerous person in an emergency. So be the asset, don't be the liability. I always like to say, all right, that's it. I'm going to wrap it up there today. I don't know how long I've been rambling on, but far too long. Hang on, there's a question here. What do you find is the best thing to make sure you have besides food? Do you trust the crypto market? From Kat. Thanks, Kat, for the question. And I'll answer it like this. The best thing apart from food is water. It's things that keep us alive. So water, food, shelter, and then security. They're probably the most important things that you can try and secure around yourself and have built up in whatever form that you can. Do I trust crypto market? No, I don't personally trust crypto market. Am I in crypto market a little bit? A little bit. I played with it. I do a little bit of it, but I actually, when I jumped into it hard, I found that I had to do that 100% and spend a good chunk of every day of my life staring at it, worrying about it, or not at all. And when I went, okay, no, I'm just going to leave it and see how it goes, it went pretty piss poor. So I don't, crypto's there. It's a thing. It's going to be there for a long time. It's going to probably evolve into something else over time. What that looks like, I have no fucking idea. What I do trust in is solid commodities. So I do trust in gold and silver. I do trust in actual things that help my life, that give me the ability to do things. So, which kind of ties into your first question, besides food, things to create food. My gardening tools, updating them, getting good ones, things to keep power turned on, or, extend my abilities out further. So generators and things like that. This is the sort of stuff that I invest in. So food supplies, gold and silver, making sure you got water, then looking after everything else. So force multipliers, power, electricity, vehicles, that sort of stuff. All right, I'm going to wrap up there today, guys. As always, if you've got any other questions, please feel free to send them through to me. Thank you very much for jumping on and watching this. I really appreciate it. And I'll try and get another one out soon. So stay safe out there, keep prepping, get in the garden, do it. And Semper Paratus.